So, recently I've been thinking about Ancestry a lot. And I did two of those DNA tests, and luckily they came out with the same results. So I come from a beautiful tribe of nomadic women that traces back to one woman 1,400 years ago, who was part of the Bantu migration from sub-Saharan Africa over to southern India, over a big mass of water to the Caribbean and to South America. And it really got me thinking about what is it that made those people, what is the common theme of what connected those people, those families, those tribes, that led to me being here to be able to speak to you on this stage today. Now, I come from a beautiful tapestry of women, of black people from across the world. And unfortunately, we used to be held account to this rule, the one-drop rule, that meant that if there was one drop of black blood in you, you were classified as black. We were categorized, marginalized, persecuted based on this rule. And so I thought, what would happen if I decided to flip the script? If I decided to change that narrative, because that narrative meant that I didn't understand my value, the value that I was contributing to our collective world. So I thought, what would happen if I decided to take that narrative and flip it and say, instead of making myself small, what would happen if I stood up and was unapologetically myself? So I'm also interested in language and patterns. And this map represents my personal ancestral cartography. So I wanted to start doing some research to really understand what are the themes that connected those people, those migrants from so many different parts of the world. And it was really simple and so obvious. I come from peoples who understand, who embody and embrace the fundamental elements of our world, of ether, of air, of fire, of water, of earth. Those elements are fundamental to our existence, to the way that we show up in the world. I wanted to look at those patterns, those elements, and really try and understand how they shape me, how they shape us, how they help us to make decisions about how we operate and show up in the world. So, ether. Ether is the silence, the ethical pause. They're found in many Indigenous vision quests, those moments where you go out into the forest, into nature, on your own, in silence to connect with the earth. They're found in the Lakota people of America. They're also found in the San people of South Africa. Of air, this is found in the Maori people. When they start doing their carvings, air is about the flow of ideas, the flow of breath, the vitality. When they do these carvings, what they do is they bring together different communities. Air is about the flow of diverse ideas, of adaptability. Fire. Fire is this vibrancy, the passion, the energy, the evolution. Fire is also found in Aboriginal culture, in fire stick burning, where it's not just about destruction, it's about regeneration. It's also found in water. Water is the element of self-reflection, of adaptability, of fluidity, and is found in the Baka tribes of Central Africa, whose lives reflect the fluidity of water. They're nomadic people, and the way that they travel and their lives are adaptable is that they move through the forest with the flow of the seasons of nature. So their life is always changing, always fluid, based on the fluidity of water. And there's earth. Earth is found with the Andean people, who see the earth as Pachamama. And they use this reverence of the land to look at how they create agriculture and their communities. And so looking at these elements, I wanted to understand, why are we here where we are now? So many of the dominant narratives in the world come from Hollywood and Silicon Valley, who would have us believe that what they are telling us is fact, that there are dystopian futures, and that that everything is going to be technological in the future. And what that does is it limits our ability to dream. It limits our ability to vision. And what it also does is this noise of these dystopian futures means that we underestimate and we don't make space to understand the potential of Indigenous cultures, of their stories, of their understanding. So this cacophony of noise of these dystopian futures, what it does is it stops us from understanding and recognizing viable possibilities that are grounded in ancestral knowledge and wisdom, that embody an elemental approach to asking deep questions, and these guiding principles. And this is why I believe that we, as people from the Global South, as Indigenous cultures, should be part of the keystone species of trying to create a regenerative world. And this is what gives me hope. With all the noise and all the stuff that's happening in the world, it keeps me moving. And so when I stand on stage with stage fright and sweaty palms and a racing heart, I remember the words of the poet and author Audre Lorde, who said, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid." And so this is a beautiful philosophical idea. But how do we make it practical? This idea of the elements, how do we turn it into something practical? Well, this is what I'm dedicating the next part of my life and my work to researching and finding and amplifying the lived experiences, the wisdom, the knowledge, the technologies of Indigenous people, of people from the Global South, because we're not given the stage. We're not asked. We are disproportionately impacted by climate crisis, and yet nobody asks us for solutions. So this is what I'm dedicating my life to now, because I think that it's important that we recognize that we have solutions, and we should be able to have a seat at the table, not as anthropological research subjects, but as people who have viable options and lived experiences that are important to ensure that we not only survive, but we thrive. So, how do we make it practical? Well, ether, the ethical pause. Recently, we have seen so many general artificial intelligence platforms being rushed to be released without the ethical pause to think about what's really happening, under the pretense, I'm going to call it a pretense, that what they're trying to do is democratize access to information, when really it's amplifying the problems that we're having. So, practical. This is Jade Lobo. I met her last year. She is amazing. Brazilian Indigenous woman who is studying a PhD in social anthropology. She is also a graduate from Harvard University. Jade's work embodies the ethical pause. This is a gift that she gave me last year. Jade is the author, the editor of this book, this magazine called Odu. It is the first written publication that brings together the indigenous knowledge of many of the Amazonian Indians, the Amazonian indigenous people, excuse me. It's the first time that they have taken their oral traditions and come together and put them in a book, because they feel that it's important, that it's not about difference, it's about coming together so that we can pause and think about the impact that the decisions we're making is having on the world. it symbolizes, it's represented by the things that they do around the stewardship of the land. As a result of this, what they've done is a lot of the elders in the Amazon have now come together, and they have created the first school of indigenous philosophies in the Amazon rainforest. Because they have realized that in order to change the world, in order to be regenerative, we need to come together. We need to have a pause, and we need to think about the impact that our histories is having on our future. Because what that does is it moves us from being reactive to being proactive. So we move from ether to fire and air, this beautiful dance, this vibrancy, because this is about communication. It's about the flow of diverse ideas. It's about evolution. It's about intergenerational knowledge that is passed down. Because the stories of our elders is not just about survival. The stories of our elders is about ingenuity. It's about understanding that the foundation of everything that we are and everything we do is interconnected. And if we don't start from that basis, we end up with this. We end up wrecking our planet because we don't recognize that everything we are, everything we do has to be interconnected. And this is where the work of my friend and mentor, Tyson Yunkaporta, comes in. And he'd be mad if I called him mentor. Tyson is an Indigenous man from Australia. And Tyson's work sits at the intersection of ancestral knowledge and artificial intelligence. And he is fascinating. And when we talk, I end up with a headache. And then I have that aha moment. Because Tyson loves a good yarn. He is a scholar and author of some seminal books. He also set up the Indigenous Research Centre at Deakin University in Melbourne. So his latest research, their latest project, is called Co-Design with a K. The K represents kinship. And it's about bringing together all the entities of our planet, this interconnected relationship. So when we are designing, we can't say that we're just going to design here and extract from the planet. We have to take into consideration the human and the more than human as part of the design process. And what that means is that it becomes an ecological and a social design process. It's an ancient Aboriginal protocol that gives us a blueprint for complex solutions, complex design. And we see this type of work in open source software, where it's a global platform where no one person has a final say on anything, where everybody can contribute to the bigger solution, where everybody's contribution is vital and valuable to ensure that the ecosystem thrives. And then we move to water. And as I said, many of our narratives, if we choose to believe them, come from Hollywood and Silicon Valley and global geopolitical monopolies that tell us that this is the future. And they put them in movies. But this is the reality of many people in the global south. These are photos I took in April in Morocco. Didn't understand that Morocco has a huge water shortage crisis. And so the things that are happening in the movies are happening in real life. So why aren't we asking people who are living these experiences? Scarcity and necessity creates ingenuity and innovation. You learn to innovate. You have a way of being creative. And yet all we see are these other narratives of what's happening in those places. Our guide, Brahim, amazing, hilarious, and will tell you riddles that have your head spinning, but also a fountain of knowledge, of wisdom. His family are nomads, and what he said is that because of the water shortage crisis, there are very few nomads left in Morocco, in the Sahara. They've had to change their lifestyle. They've had to change the way that they operate. And so this means that we need to rethink who we go to our leaders. Who are our leaders when we're talking about innovation, sustainability, and regeneration? You can't always learn this stuff in a book. There are people who have lived experience of this world that we are putting in movies. Why aren't we speaking to them? Because with their ingenuity, with their scarcity, with their lived experience, they're able to create miracles in the desert. So, we now move to the element of earth that brings all of this together, that grounds it in real-world impact. So this is somebody else who's now also become a friend. This is Pri Bertucci. Pri is Brazilian and has created a gender-neutral language system in Brazilian Portuguese that recognizes all identities. It's not necessarily something new. It is taking it back, taking language back to where it was. We've started to create a world where we're using binary questioning, binary language to talk about things that are holistic and alive. And that restricts our capability. So what Pri has done has taken us back to where we were in the first place. This idea of being able to have conversations, to when we design systems and structures, we are taking into consideration everybody, all entities, all bodies, all ways of being and seeing. And this is starting to change society in Brazil. So with Pri's language system, what do you think would happen to the types of questions we asked? We wouldn't be asking binary questions that lead to binary answers. Tyson and I had a conversation about it the other day. The problem with a lot of the systems, the AI platforms that we are building and that we are releasing into the world is that the question at the beginning is wrong. It's binary, and if you ask wrong, you're only going to get more wrong. So if we start to think about this from a holistic aliveness perspective, it means that we get to ask the right questions. And what that means is that sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes it's going to show our shadow side. Sometimes we're going to stand on the stage and not be able to talk, and have sweaty palms and sweaty pits, and my heart is racing. But we have to recognize that when all the world is a stage, we are not all just actors. We are co-designers of our collective destiny, and we have to take responsibility for that. And that is why I believe that an elemental approach to asking deep questions means that we have a chance of ether, the ethical pause, that stop, that silence, that let me wait and think, of air, the flow of ideas, of diverse ideas, this adaptability, of fire, of passion, of energy, of transformation, of water, that sometimes shows our true self and our shadow sides. But sometimes we're all a bit shit, and we have to hold a mirror up to ourselves. If we want to progress, we have to start with ourselves. And with earth, grounding it into kinship and the real world impact. Because we all have a responsibility. And I know that this is the question that I've been trying to ask all my life. And so, if you want to take away anything from this, it is every day, please ask yourself the question, what type of ancestor do I want to be? Thank you.